Dearly devoted Dexter. Chapter 3. It is always a bad idea to follow a regular routine, particularly if you are a homicidal pedophile who has come to the attention of Dexter the Avenger. Happily for me, no one had ever given McGregor this vital bit of information, and so it was quite easy for me to find him leaving his office at 6:30 p.m., as he did every day. He came out the back door, locked it, and climbed into his big Ford SUV, a perfect vehicle for hauling people around to look at houses or for carrying bundled up little boys down the dock. He pulled out into the traffic and I followed him into his modest concrete block house on Southwest 80th Street. There was quite a bit of traffic going by the house. I turned onto a small side street half a block away and parked unobtrusively where I had a good view. There was a tall, thick hedge running down the far side of McGregor's lot that would keep the neighbors from seeing anything that went on in his yard. I sat in front of my car and pretended to look at a map for about 10 minutes, just long enough to scheme and be sure that he wasn't going anywhere. When he came out of his house and began to putter around the yard, shirtless and wearing a pair of battered madras shorts, I knew how I would do it. I headed for home to get ready. In spite of the fact that I normally have a robust and healthy appetite, I always find it difficult to eat before one of my little adventures. My interior associate quivers with rising anticipation. The moon burbles louder and louder in my veins as the night slides over the city, and thoughts of food begin to seem so very ordinary. And so, of enjoying a leisurely high-protein dinner, I paced my apartment, eager to begin, but still cool enough to wait, letting daytime Dexter melt quietly into the background and feeling this intoxicating surge of power as the Dark Passenger slowly takes the wheel and checks the controls. It was always an exhilarating situation. A sensation to allow myself to be pulled into the back seat and let the passenger drive. Shadows seem to grow sharper edges, and the darkness fades into a lively gray that brings everything into much sharper focus. Small sounds become loud and distinct. My skin tingles, my breath roars and out, in and out. And even the air comes alive with smells that were certainly not noticeable during the boring normal day. I was never more alive than when the Dark Passenger was driving. I forced myself to sit in my easy chair and held myself in, feeling the need roll over me and leave behind a high tide of readiness. Each breath felt like a blast of cold air sweeping through me and pumping me up bigger and brighter until I was like an enormous, invincible beacon of steel ready to slash through the now dark city. And then my chair became a stupid little thing, a hiding place for mice, and only the night was big enough, and it was time. Out we went into the bright night, the moonlight hammering at me in the dead roses, the ones that breathe the breath of Miami, its night blowing across my skin, and almost in no time at all, I was there. And the shadows cast by McGregor's hedge, watching and waiting and listening just for now, to the caution that curled around my wrist and whispered, "Patience." It seemed pathetic that he could not see something that gleamed as brightly as I did. And the thought gave me another surge of strength. I pulled on my white silk mask and I was ready to begin. Slowly, invisibly, I moved from the darkness of the hedge and placed a child's plastic piano keyboard beneath his window, putting it under his gladius bush so it would not be seen immediately. It was bright red and blue, less than a foot long, and it had only 8 keys, but it would repeat the same 4 melodies endlessly until the battery died. I switched it on and stepped back into my place on the hedge. Jingle bells played, and then Old MacDonald. For some reason, the key phrase was missing in each song. But the little toy piped on and into London Bridge in the same cheerful lunatic tone. It was enough to make anyone go crazy, but it probably had an extra effect on someone like McGregor, who lived for children. At any rate, I certainly hoped so. I had quite deliberately chosen the little keyboard to lure him out, and I sincerely hoped, in fact, that he would think he had been found out, and that a toy had come from hell to punish him. After all, why shouldn't I enjoy what I do? It seemed to work. We were only on the third repetition of London Bridge when he came stumbling out of his house with a look of wide-eyed panic. He stood there for a moment, gaping around, his receding reddish hair looking like it had gone through a storm, and his pale belly hanging slightly over the waist of his dingy pajama bottoms. He did not look terribly dangerous to me, but of course I was not a 5-year-old boy. After a moment in which he stood with his mouth open and scratched himself, looked like he was modeling for a statue of the Greek god of stupidity, McGregor located the source of the sound. Jingle bells, again, by now. He stepped over and bent over slightly to touch the little plastic keyboard, and didn't even have the time to be surprised before I had a noose of 50-pound test fishing line pulled tight around his throat. He straightened and thought he might struggle for a moment. I pulled him tighter, and he changed his mind. "Stop fighting," we said in our cold and commandative passenger voice. "You'll live longer." And he heard his future in the words and thought he might change it. So I pulled hard on his leash, and he held it until his face turned dark and dropped to his knees. Just before he passed out completely, I eased the pressure. "Now do as you're told," we said. He didn't say anything. He just choked in a few large and painful breaths. So I tweaked the line a touch. "Understand?" we said. He nodded, so I let him breathe. We did not try to fight anymore, as I frog-marched him into the house for his car keys, and then back out into his big SUV. I climbed into the seat behind him, holding the leash in a very tight grip, and allowing him only enough breath to stay alive, for now. "Start the car," we told him, and he paused. "What do you want?" he said in a voice that was rough with new-made gravel. "What do you want?" "Everything," we said. "Start the car." "I have money," he said. I pulled hard on his cord. "Buy me a little boy," we said. I held it in for a few seconds, too tight for him to breathe, and just long enough to let him know that we were in charge. We knew what he had done, and we would let him breathe only at our pleasure from now on. And when I loosened the line up again, he had nothing to say. He drove, as we told him, back up to Southwest 80th Street to Old Color Road, and then south. There was almost no traffic this far out, not at this time of night, and we turned into a new development that had been going up on the far side of Snapper Creek. Construction had halted due to the owner's conviction of money laundering, and we would not be disturbed. We guided McGregor through a half-built guard booth around a small traffic circle east towards the water and to a halt beside a small trailer. The temporary office of the site, now left to teen thrill seekers and others like me, who only wanted a little privacy. We sat for just a moment, enjoying the view, moon over the water, with pedophile and noose in the foreground. Very beautiful. And I got out and pulled McGregor after me, pulled him so hard that he fell to his knees and clawed at the line around his neck. For a moment I watched him choking and drooling in the dirt, his face turning dark again against his eyes, which were going red. Then I pulled him to his feet and pushed him up to 3 wooden steps and into the trailer. By the time he had recovered enough to know what was going on, I had him tied to the top of a desk, hands and feet secured with duct tape. McGregor tried to speak, and just coughed instead. I waited. Now there was plenty of time. "Please," he said finally in a voice like sand on glass. "I'll give you whatever you want." "Yes, you will," we said, and we saw the sound of it cut into him. And even though he couldn't see it through my white silk mask, we smiled. I took out the photos I had taken from his boat and showed them to him. He stopped moving completely and his mouth hung open. "Where did you get those?" he said, sounding rather petulant for someone who was about to be cut in small pieces. "Tell me why you took these pictures." "Why should I?" he said. I used a pair of tin snips to cut off the first 2 fingers of his left hand. He thrashed and screamed and the blood came, which always made me angry. So I shoved a tennis ball into his mouth and cut off the first 2 fingers of his right hand. "No reason," I said, and I waited for him to slow down just a little bit. When he finally did, he rolled an eye towards me. His face was filled with that of understanding that comes when you have gone beyond pain into knowing what the rest of this was going to be, that this was forever. I took the tennis ball out of his mouth. "Who took the pictures?" He smiled. "I hope one of them was yours," he said, which made the next 90 minutes a lot more rewarding.